CBS says the Niners have the 16th best roster in the NFL. That's as mediocre as it gets. That's different than the way we talk about the Niners locally. The way we talk about the Niners locally is their roster can compete with anyone's roster when healthy, no matter who their quarterback is. I mean, at least this year, Lance and Garoppolo. Do you guys agree with CBS's ranking? What do you think? Ben, why don't you start us off?
Yeah, so I think initially when I saw the Niners in the middle of the pack, I wasn't too hesitant to go one way or the other. But the more I dig into it, you actually think about it. If you look at the teams that CBS put ahead of the 49ers on that list we're talking about, it's teams like the Steelers, the Broncos, and the Dolphins.
The Broncos?
Yes, the Broncos. The Steelers are 9th on their list, Grant. It's insane. I don't know what they're basing this off. And if you look, a lot of their reasoning for a team like the Miami Dolphins is for like Tua Tagovailoa and Mike Gesicki, right? And Jalen Waddle, who I think Waddle's great. But the point is that I think if you look at the way people frame this and the way specifically this article talked about it, 49ers are much better than they should be on this list. In fact, they should be top 10, 11, 12 in my opinion. So I don't really understand this idea that the 49ers have the 16th best roster in the NFL. I think all teams are dealing with health one way or the other. So when you kind of take away that factor from it, the 49ers should be much better than a middle of the pack team. And if you're taking that into account, even like I said, there's 3 teams who I just named who I feel like the 49ers should be ahead of. So I just don't quite understand this list.
Yeah, I have to agree as well. I mean, there was 3 or 4 teams. One that I would add to the list that Ben said was like the Cowboys too. Being a better team or better roster than the 49ers with their questions at quarterback and how's Dak coming back, and then all the guys that have kind of aged at their positions and the contract issues that they have there as well. I thought that I didn't really understand, because I thought once they listed, they would put reasons why, as far as why they listed what they listed. But there was
so Suneil.
I know, exactly, right? So I think this is all because your channel is bigger than CBS's on when it comes to the Bay Area. So they're taking shots at the 49ers because of that. But I mean, this list, I didn't really understand it. I mean, even a team like Baltimore, when you look at their team, they have, a lot of great weapons on defense, but when you look at their offense, other than Lamar Jackson, you're not really looking at the receivers as like super crazy receivers or all that kind of stuff. So I didn't really understand how they were judging this. They didn't put any criteria or anything like that. It was just kind of like who maybe had the biggest stars, and then that's how they kind of rated it, right? So when you put it that way, I mean, the 49ers might be middle of the pack as far as star power, just because the players that we have aren't necessarily superstars in the NFL, but we all know if you're rating them as far as top players at their position, 49ers are going to have a lot of top players as far as effectiveness and so on and so forth, but maybe not just like the superstars that are marquee players in the NFL other than Kittle, really. So if that's how they judged it on, I guess that's probably why they put the 49ers at 16. But overall, I thought the list was pretty trash.
Yeah, the Rams were at 4th. I just wanted to put that out there for everybody.
Good to know. 4th. Wow. 40 million.
But they have a lot of notable players: Stafford, Ramsey, Aaron. So they have like all of those like superstars, which is what I think this list kind of boiled down to when you look more in depth to it.
Okay, Jack, you go.
Well, when you look at the way that they did the ranking, they tried to make it so that all of the positions were equal. So they didn't. Just because you had a top-level quarterback, it didn't knock you down on the list. So, the one that kind of jumps out would be the Packers at 7. Having the Packers at 7, it makes sense if you look at their overall roster. Their overall roster is pretty solid. I wouldn't put the Packers at 7 though, because I'd be taking Aaron Rodgers off that list at this point, because we don't know if he's going to be there. So, from a and then also, go back to somebody brought up the Cowboys earlier. Well, when you look at the Cowboys rosters, like let's take the wide receiver position, for example, and that's what they talk about on this list. At wide receiver, they have Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup, and CeeDee Lamb. That 3 is way better than what the 49ers have in Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk, and then who knows who the third guy is going to be, right? So those are some of the reasons, and they say that even they stayed in there that, the 49ers have a up and coming offensive line the quarterback, decision hasn't been decided yet. There's going to be a change there. They talk about, the interesting rookies in Sermon and Mitchell. I think the issue and what brings the 49ers down to 16 is that they're looking at some of the defensive side. Some of the, I think they're maybe overrating a little bit the loss of Richard Sherman.
Yeah.
The loss of D Ford as a pass rusher. They're obviously not putting a whole lot of stock in Ebicom coming back and filling in that role. So that's an interesting one. And they kind of finish off with saying that they don't expect the 49ers to have a top 5 defense again based off of the talent that they have on that side of the roster. So, I don't. 16. When you look at the list, they're what are they, 7th in the NFC? There's only 17. Yeah, and there's of the top half. The top half of the NFL. There's only 7 in the. There's more AFC teams.
Are they last in the NFC West?
No, they're second to last. They have Seattle as 4th. So it's in the NFC West. It's the Rams at 4, the Cardinals at 11, and the 49ers at 16. And when you look at that again, though, let's take a look at the Cardinals, for example, because I know that there's folks. I think Grant, you've mentioned about the talent on the Cardinals. Correct?
Yeah, it's a loaded roster.
You look at the wide receiver position, and you can make an argument that their wide receiver position is better than the 49ers. Quarterback situation. A lot of folks are going to say that their quarterback's a top 10 quarterback, even though I would disagree with that. But that's a common thread that you have.
When you factor in the running too, he's very effective, even though he's inconsistent as a thrower for sure.
Right. No, yeah, you've got to throw that in there, and that's what we'll be, and that's something that we'll do with when Trey Lance takes over, right? But as far as a thrower, a guy that's going to win games for you, I don't see him necessarily being a guy that's going to be able to win games game in and game out. He's going to make that exciting play like he did against Buffalo, but he's also going to cost you games along the way. So, I don't know. 16th for the 49ers, I think, is a little low, but when you really read through theirs and you take the time to read through some of these other rankings, they make sense. I mean, I think we'd all agree that Washington has a pretty darn good team. They beat the 49ers last year. They were right there with them. If they improve their quarterback play, which I think people have, they'll be up there too. So the only like I said, the main one I take is the Packers, because I don't think Rodgers is going to be there, and the Cowboys. That one on defensive side, I don't know if they have as much talent as the 49ers. So I put them right around probably 12, 11, somewhere around there. Based off of if you're looking at positional value being the same across the board, we know that's not really the case once you start playing the games.
It seems to me that if CBS is right, that's not good for the 49ers. This is year 5. They've been building this thing for 5 years, the brick by brick philosophy. It's unacceptable to have the 16th best roster at this point. Now, to the Niners' credit, I think it's a way better roster than this. I think CBS is wrong. I think the fact that they're not weighing quarterbacks above other positions and they still rank the Niners 16th, I mean, that's one of the best things the Niners have going for them is all the pieces beyond the quarterback. And then I really like Trey Lance. I think once he shows himself, this team's going to be ranked higher. But 16th, that is unacceptable. Mediocre after 4 years, unacceptable. And I think to the Niners' credit, they're wrong. I mean, they have lost some depth. Armstead's expensive, but man, Grant, they still have a really good D-line.
Yeah. But you were talking about this earlier in the offseason at some point, how if you look at this roster outside of the quarterback position, it's one of the 10 best rosters in the NFL, maybe. So,
and I like Trey Lance, so I just feel like this got to be a top 10 roster. Now, of course, you got to factor in the injury history in some way, but it doesn't sound like that's why they're knocked down to 16. Like they legitimately think this is a mediocre team. I disagree.
Teams like the Broncos and the Dolphins should not be ahead of them. To me, that those are some teams that are middle of the pack teams who are deep at specific positions, but when you actually look at how their teams have done recently, they're not better than what the 49ers are right now.
I just don't see, where is this coming from? The last few years, the national media was so bullish on the 49ers, and now all of a sudden it's like, well, they're like the 16th best team. Like, really? Okay.
Well, Vegas,
and that's okay.
Maybe this is some of the blowback from the draft thing.
Perhaps. Hey, good point. You burned all these national reporters, made them look stupid, said you were doing a social experiment, and now everyone's like, you know what? Kyle Shanahan's the 13th best head coach in the league. You know what? That roster is – hey, man, that's a good point, Jack. That's a veteran's point of view. I think he's right.
The other thing with this list, though, that does play into the 49ers' favor is that they have six teams that they're going to be playing against in the NFC that are ranked below them. The Seahawks, the Vikings, Bears, Eagles, Falcons. The Lions, Falcons, and Eagles are all among the worst of the four worst in the league.
Right.
So, and they do say at the beginning of the article that it doesn't have anything to do with what they expect the win-loss record to be.
Well, thanks a lot, CBS.